Imagine walking into your home at night, only to find a stranger inside. He forces you to swear on Satan that you won't scream, then does unspeakable things. That stranger was Richard Ramirez, the infamous Night Stalker, and tonight, you'll hear part one of how someone like him emerged in America's nightmares. Richard Ramirez was born on February 29, 1960, in El Paso, Texas, the youngest child of Mexican immigrant parents. His father, Julian, was an alcoholic and violent ex-policeman whose brutality left a deep mark from the very beginning. Ramirez's mother worked in a boot factory, exposing him and his siblings to chemical fumes that may have contributed to early health issues. From a young age, Ramirez suffered head injuries. At age 2, a dresser fell on him, and at age 5, he was knocked out by a swing. By the time he was 6 or 7, he began having seizures and was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition linked to impulsivity, aggression, dissociation, and hallucinations. But trauma wasn't just physical. At age 12, Ramirez was deeply influenced by his older cousin Miguel Mike Ramirez, a decorated Vietnam Green Beret. Mike bragged about war crimes, rape, torture, murder, and even showed Polaroid photos of his acts. Ramirez was present when his cousin murdered his own wife in 1973. That violence, surreal and normalized, shaped his moral compass in devastating ways. By his teens, Richard was experimenting with drugs, marijuana at 10, later LSD, and cocaine. He dropped out of high school, moved from El Paso to Los Angeles in 1982, and lived a nomadic lifestyle, sleeping in motels on Skid Row, cars he stole, diving into petty crime to support a growing addiction. In 1983, Ramirez served months in jail for auto theft. There he met someone entrenched in Satanic practices and began exploring occult beliefs seriously. By his release in early 1984, he was a broken, hollow man with rotten teeth, heavy drug dependency, no hygiene, no hope, and a violent, occult-obsessed worldview. She woke up to a figure at the foot of her bed, a shadow with eyes that didn't blink. She reached for her husband. He wasn't breathing. That's when she realized she wasn't asleep, and he wasn't sleeping. It was June 28, 1984, in Glassell Park, Los Angeles. Jenny Vincow, 79 years old, lived alone. Her apartment was found in disarray by her son. The window had been pried open. Jenny had been stabbed repeatedly, her throat slashed so deeply she was nearly decapitated. Her body was mutilated. It was a crime that felt ritualistic, chaotic, and pointless. But it was just the beginning. No one connected at the time to a man who'd recently arrived from Texas, with rotting teeth, a fascination with Satan, and a growing appetite for blood. After that first killing, Richard Ramirez disappeared for a while. He drifted through cheap motels, stole cars, used cocaine. He broke into homes, not always to kill, but to watch, to listen, to study how easy it was. And then he struck again. March 17, 1985, Maria Hernandez, 22, had just pulled into her garage in Rosemead. She stepped out of her car. As the garage door closed behind her, she heard footsteps. A man appeared, black clothing, dark hat, and a .22 pistol pointed directly at her. He fired. The bullet hit her keys. By pure luck, she survived. Inside the condo, her roommate Dale Okazaki heard the shot. She peeked around the kitchen corner, and Richard shot her in the forehead. She died instantly. He fled, but he wasn't done that night. Just an hour later, in Monterey Park, he pulled 30-year-old Salian from her car and shot her twice. She died in the hospital. By this point, it was clear. This wasn't a robbery. This was something else. These crimes were erratic. No clear profile. No consistent weapon. No signature. Ramirez killed the elderly. He killed the young. He shot, stabbed, beat, raped. The randomness is what made him terrifying. Most serial killers follow patterns. Richard Ramirez didn't. His only pattern was terror. Within days, Los Angeles was on edge. People were locking their windows, sleeping with lights on, buying guns. In the following weeks, Ramirez went on a spree that felt almost supernatural. He would walk for miles, barefoot, through neighborhoods. He'd test sliding doors. If they were locked, he'd move on. If they were open, he went in. He believed Satan was guiding him, protecting him. He told one victim, "Swear to Satan you won't scream." When she did, he let her live. On March 27th, he murdered Vincent and Maxine Zazera. Vincent was shot in his sleep. Maxine woke up, fought back. Ramirez stabbed her, gouged out her eyes, placed them in a jewelry box, and left them behind. Police knew then they were hunting something not just evil, but disturbed. Maxine had been mutilated after death. There were pentagrams at the scene, shoe prints, and fear was growing. People began calling him the walking killer, the Valley Intruder. But none of the names stuck until one specific witness described him as a shadow that entered homes at night and vanished before dawn. That's when the media settled on a new name, the Night Stalker. And true to that name, Richard Ramirez didn't strike during the day. He moved like smoke, through fences, across roofs, in and out of windows. Always at night, always random. On May 14th, 1985, he beat Bill Doy, 66, to death in front of his disabled wife. Then he raped her while she was handcuffed to the bed. He told her he worshipped Satan, made her say it too. Afterward, he left, calmly, no rush. It was always like that, violence, fear, calm exit. He hit again in Monrovia, Burbank, Arcadia, Pico Rivera, July 2nd, July 5th, July 7th. Every few days, another body. Another survivor who described him the same way. Bad teeth, dark eyes, foul breath, and the smell of rot. Ramirez was a walking corpse. But still, no one could catch him. Even children weren't safe. On March 18th, he abducted a 6-year-old girl from her bed, sexually assaulted her, and dropped her off hours later in Echo Park. She survived, gave a description. Police now had composite sketches, a general sense of height, weight, and age. But Ramirez was a ghost. He used different cars, different stolen plates. He changed clothes, hairstyles. The only thing that never changed was the horror he left behind. By July, the city of Los Angeles was paralyzed. People were afraid to sleep. Husbands stayed up all night with baseball bats and knives. Locksmiths were booked solid. Even police officers were afraid, because unlike most criminals, Ramirez didn't run. He watched. Survivors later said he stared them down, enjoyed it, took his time. He liked being feared. But the most terrifying thing? He wasn't close to Dawn. She was only 16. He told her, "Don't scream, or I'll kill your baby sister." Then he took her into the basement and made her swear to Satan before he did what he came to do. It was now July 1985, and Richard Ramirez had crossed the threshold. What had started as sudden, chaotic murders had become a rampage. He wasn't just killing, he was torturing, playing with victims, forcing them to pray to the devil, making them call him the Night Stalker. And he wasn't hiding anymore. He was enjoying it. The media coverage, the citywide fear. He was reading the newspapers that talked about him, and he liked what he saw. July 20th, he breaks into the Glendale home of Lela and Max Needing. They're in bed. He shoots Max first, then Lela. But instead of leaving, he stays in the house, eats their food, scrawls satanic messages on the walls. Police find pentagrams drawn in lipstick and a black hat left behind. The hat was a mistake. A print would soon be lifted from it, but not yet. For now, he kept moving. July 22nd, Sun Valley, the home of Chainarong and Samkit Kovanev. He shot Chainarong in front of his wife and child, then forced Samkit a hand over all the jewelry in the house. After that, he tied her up, raped her, and made her swear to Satan not to scream. She lived. Just days later, July 27th, he entered the house of Christopher and Virginia Peterson in Northridge. He shot both of them in the head, but somehow they survived. Ramirez panicked and ran. His cool, calculated demeanor was starting to crack. The pressure was mounting, and LA wasn't the only city watching anymore. Every major paper in America was following the story. The police still didn't know who he was, but they knew he was getting sloppy. And then came August 6th. Chris and Sakina Abawath, sleeping at home in Diamond Bar with their 2-year-old son. Richard broke in, shot Chris in the temple, raped Sakina, took his time, ate a melon from the fridge, talked to her, mocked her, told her the devil had chosen him. Her son, just 2 years old, was watching. Ramirez didn't care. The next morning, police found shoe print. Same as all the others, an obvious sneaker, size 11.5. That brand had only been sold to a few stores in California. Investigators started tracking every buyer, every receipt. And finally, A break came. August 18th, San Francisco. Peter and Barbara Pan. Richard shot them both. Drew pentagrams on the wall. Wrote, "Jack the Knife," in lipstick. But this time, San Francisco PD lifted a fingerprint from the rearview mirror of the car he'd stolen. It was a match. A 25-year-old drifter with a long rap sheet. His name? Richard Ramirez. The moment the name hit the system, detectives in Los Angeles knew. He'd been arrested before, for car theft, drugs, burglary. They had mugshots, prints, everything. They went public with his name and face on August 29, 1985. It was the beginning of the end. But Richard Ramirez wasn't going to be taken quietly. When his face hit the evening news, he was already gone, on a Greyhound bus to Tucson, Arizona, trying to visit his brother. He didn't know he was now the most wanted man in America, the Night Stalker, and the entire state of California was hunting him. On August 30th, he came back, took another bus, this time in East LA. He stepped off, walked into a store, saw his own face on the front page of a newspaper. He panicked. Locals recognized him immediately. One shouted, "El Matador," the killer. Richard ran, tried to steal a car, got chased by a group of men. They surrounded him, beat him with a metal pipe, held him down until police arrived. That's how it ended. Not with a bullet, not in darkness, but in daylight, with citizens beating the devil out of the Night Stalker. When police cuffed him, he whispered something. "It's over." He walked into the courtroom grinning, dressed in black, and raised his hand to show a pentagram carved into his palm. Then he said it out loud, "Hail Satan." The room went dead silent. That was day one of the trial of Richard Ramirez, and it only got worse from there. After his arrest on August 31st, 1985, the world wanted answers, but Ramirez didn't speak much. Not at first. He smirked in court. He taunted photographers. When asked if he felt remorse, he said, "Big deal. Death always comes with the territory. I'll see you in Disneyland." That line haunted people, because Ramirez wasn't insane in the legal sense. He was calculated. He understood what he did, and he enjoyed it. The trial didn't even start until July 1988, nearly 3 years after his arrest. Why the delay? For one, the sheer number of charges. Ramirez was ultimately tried for 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The evidence spanned cities, counties, victims of every age. And he had a team of lawyers who pushed every technicality. One juror even had to be dismissed after falling in love with him. The state of California assembled an overwhelming case. Survivors took the stand. People who had seen Ramirez in their homes, survived his attacks, and lived to testify. One woman, Maria Hernandez, told how he shot her point blank. Another described how he forced her to swear on Satan before raping her. One after another, victims gave voice to the nightmare. There was physical evidence too. The obvious sneaker prints, the stolen jewelry he pawned, the DNA, the fingerprint from the stolen car, his teeth, the infamous rotted smile, match bite marks on some of the bodies. He left his mark in blood, in sweat, in fingerprints, in fear. But the most disturbing part, he had groupies. Women sent him letters, photos, marriage proposals. Some showed up at every hearing. One woman, Doreen Leoe, actually married him in 1996. She believed he was innocent. She said the evidence was manipulated by the system. She wasn't alone. There were others who believed he was some kind of dark romantic antihero. They missed the point entirely. On September 20th, 1989, after 4 years of court proceedings, the jury found Richard Ramirez guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to death, to be carried out by gas chamber. When the sentence was read, he looked around and said, "It's no big deal. Everyone has their day. My time is coming. I'll be back." He was sent to San Quentin State Prison, California's death row. But here's the final irony. The Night Stalker never faced execution. He sat on death row for over 2 decades, 24 years, to be exact. While families of his victims waited, Ramirez lived. He read books, drew satanic symbols, gave interviews, laughed, stayed alive. On June 7th, 2013, he died of B-cell lymphoma, a type of cancer. He was 53 years old, weighed just over 60 kilograms. He'd spent more of his life locked away than free. And in the end, Cancer did what the justice system never got the chance to. To this day, people argue about Ramirez's mind. Was he born evil, or made into a monster by his upbringing? His head injuries, the abuse, his cousin's influence, drugs, trauma, it all paints a complex picture. But when you strip it down, what remains is a man who chose to hurt people, who found joy in fear, who told a survivor, "I love death. I love fear. I love pain." That's not mystery. That's horror. Real horror. The kind you can't lock the door against. Because Ramirez showed the world that sometimes evil doesn't knock. It walks right in. That's the story of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. And if it made you check your locks tonight, you're not alone. Because long after he died, the echo of what he did still haunts the dark. Some stories don't end. They just vanish, like the person who caused them. What happened wasn't just a crime. It was a fracture in reality, where safety became a lie, and evil wore the face of someone you'd never suspect. And the worst part, sometimes they're still out there. This is the world we live in. Stay aware, stay human, and never assume the stranger beside you is just tired. Sometimes they're hungry. I'm Mr. Valen, a small channel trying to grow. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare. Welcome to the dark side of real life.